final official football Friday until fall, really. And as we get ready for Super Bowl 56 on Sunday, there are questions to be asked around this game, how the teams got here, what's it mean for the rest of the league. And let's start there. When we look at the Bengals and the Rams, Colin, has either of these teams laid down a solid blueprint? Because look, sports are copycat. No matter which league it is, they see teams go to the championship round or win a championship. They're going to try and do what those teams did. Has either of these organizations laid a blueprint for how to get to the Super Bowl for other teams?
Yes, the Rams have, and I'll tell you how the Rams have done it. The Rams have laid the blueprint, at least for me, and it could be a plan where a lot of people don't want to undertake, but it's one that says, to hell with tomorrow, figure out today, and we'll figure out tomorrow when we get there. And I think it's one that can invite skepticism. It also could invite losing 5 years from right now. But what it does do is it says, we're going to satiate and satisfy our fan base for right now. We need to meet the moment, and the moment was this. They had a brand new stadium, and they had the Super Bowl coming to town. And we want to go ahead and try to get to that moment. And it's here. Whether they win, whether they lose, they're not going to draw. They can't tie, although there's a bunch of ties in football this year. They can't tie the Super Bowl, I don't think. But they wanted to meet the moment and hit a crescendo right now, and they did, and tomorrow be damned. That isn't to say they're going to fall off. It's not automatic, and that's the thing that a lot of people try to make this argument. Well, you got to stay the course. You got to do what the team like the Pittsburgh Steelers does. Never too high, never too low. There's no guarantee that the Rams are going to fall off in 3, 4, 5 years. They might, but again, I like that the Rams said, let's try to hit an upswing and a big upswing, and the cap's going to go up. Who's to say we don't find a great player at 32nd in the draft? Who's to say without any draft picks that we don't go out and get free agents or guys that we have as third and fourth rounders a couple years ago, they improve and get better? We're gonna take a chance. We're still gonna be good, but we're gonna take the big chance. We're gonna be real good
what it really
in 2021, 2022.
What it calls into contrast is the complete and utter lack of appetite for risk that some organizations have, i.e., the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, there's not a lot of appetite for risk. They want to know that they're going to be right there in the conversation every year and making the bigger moves, the Minkah Fitzpatrick moves, for example. They're not happening all that often. They're just not, because they don't want to stray too far from the course because there's more risk involved there.
Well, and they made a Devin Bush move, and when you make that move, you better hit.
Yeah, and when it burns them, I honestly think it makes them reticent to go back to that well again anytime soon.
Well, it's kind of like this. They might, and I've said this before too, it's the same thing with cornerback. They might think a corner is the best guy on the board. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's hesitancy to take a corner in the top of the draft.
Because they've been so bad at it. Yep.
You go all the way back to that bum that Belichick talked all kind of mess about.
Anthony Smith?
Yes. He was a top 3 round pick. You take they've been Artie Burns is another top 3 round pick. The guy that Senquez Golson, now that wasn't his fault. He kept getting hurt, but he was a top 3 round pick. I mean, there's been guys, person after person, that's been a top 3 round pick that's been a defensive back, and I wonder if it's the same thing with the Steelers. But back to the plan, I don't hate the plan of the Rams. In fact, I love it, because I think fan bases, season ticket holders, people like that, it is such a live in the now sort of thing and such a payoff and a payback to the fans. They're okay with realizing one Super Bowl or one Super Bowl trip for maybe a couple years of stagnation or maybe a couple years of falling off really bad, if they know that you went for it.
Yeah.
And this team went for it.
Yeah, it's weird, though, because it's a fan base.
And they're trusting their scouts to make good picks.
Well, that I give them credit for not only that, but for look, what trade has not worked out for them to this point. Maybe there's one I'm not remembering, but, I mean, Odell Beckham, that wasn't a trade, but you get what I mean. That has worked out. Von Miller, that has worked out. Matt Stafford, that has worked out. Go all the way back to acquiring Jalen Ramsey a couple years ago. That has worked out. It's all worked out for them. Now, again, maybe I'm not remembering. Maybe there's one or two out there that I don't remember that have not panned out. But when your hit rate is that solid, I mean, it's very easy to look at it and say, well, that's the model we want to follow. Yeah, but do you have the people in place to actually make that model work? It's like when you talk about the Bengals model. The Bengals model is be really bad, right? Be really bad for a long time, get a bunch of top picks, in particular top picks, top 10 picks in the first overall a couple of years back to back, and you get the quarterback and you get the wide receiver, and then you supplement with sort of not second-tier free agents, but not the elite of the elite at free agent positions that you need, and you fortify around those young guys. I don't think anyone in Cincinnati planned for this to come to fruition this quickly, though.
The guy I couldn't remember was Justin Lane, who did his best work in the back of a police car.
Yeah.
So it was Burns, Lane, Golson, and Anthony Smith are the four guys that they've taken in the top 3 rounds that have just been superior busts.
Yeah.
Just superior busts. So I wonder if they're hesitant to go back to that well. And that, again, I don't know. The other part is, too, we know what the Bengals' plan was, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It is what you got to do, what you got to do, whatever. If you suck, you suck. You get the number 1 overall pick in Burrow. You get a 5th overall pick in what you did, and you got Chase out of it. You got a pitch-and-catch combination that's going to be great for a decade or more, right? You know what the Rams' avenue is. All right, sell out, go get that quarterback. You got a quarterback of value that took you to the Super Bowl. Flip them for somebody else. You think you can sell the farm now, and, man, when it's 2025, you might have 3 wins, but it is what it is. Make people happy. The Super Bowl's coming here. The Steelers' plan isn't identifiable right now. That's a huge problem to me.
Yeah. No, there's no – I mean, I guess if you had to identify something – you would look at it and say, okay, we're going to take the cornerstone running back and we're going to build around the defense. But then, as we talked about earlier, you can have the defensive player of the year and a couple other very good pieces on your defense, i.e. Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick. The rest of your defense, and Joe Hayden, not knowing if he'll be back next year or not, the rest of your defense isn't up to par. Well, it's not going to be good enough.
Did you think Matt Stafford would go to the Rams and would understand this? I don't want to say resurgence because his numbers are gigantic even in Detroit, but would realize the success that he's had?
I didn't think it would happen the year he got there. I mean, again, with everything that's around him, you look at all the weapons at receiver, even before they went and got Beckham, Woods before he got hurt, Kupp and Jefferson, and I don't think anybody expected this from Cooper Kupp, but I suspect, I mean, it would have been, I think, a grand disappointment had they not at the very least been a playoff team, right? And then once you get in, it's a matter of how far can you go. I expected, and I've stopped expecting, Stafford to wilt somewhat under the playoff pressure because he hadn't been under it on a regular basis, but he's proven that that's not necessarily the case. That even though he's never played in games of this magnitude before, that they're not really much of a problem for him. And if that keeps up on Sunday, then Joe Burrow's going to have to pull more than just one rabbit out of the hat, I think, to end up stealing it.
I've run into a lot of flack for my Burrow take this morning. It's a Marino moment for him. Look, nobody can predict the future. And I'm predicting the future a little bit, or at least trying to.
Right.
I just feel like the AFC is so stacked, and it is going to continue to be stacked with young quarterbacks, that guys are going to continue to improve. And you already have Buffalo. It's not San Diego, it's the Chargers, though. You have them, and you have Mahomes, who's not getting out of the way. This is, again, I'll say it, and I could be dead wrong as soon as next year. I just don't think I'm going to be. This is going to be Burrow's only Super Bowl trip. Because here's why. If they don't fortify that line, he's going to get killed. That's number one. And people say, well, he still threw for all these yards. You can still only get hit that many times. He can't keep getting sacked 9 times in games of consequence and them getting through or him staying healthy. It can't happen. They've got to do something.
Well, they don't really have any other holes to plug this offseason, really. It should just be all about the offensive line, you would think.
They should be like, who was the baseball team? Was it Seattle that drafted all pitchers in that 25-round draft? Yes. They should draft all offensive linemen and hope they hit. I mean, seriously. But I just think that the AFC is just so stacked with quarterbacks and is going to be so tough to get through.
I agree that it's stacked with quarterbacks, and I think we are in for like a golden age of quarterbacks, especially on the AFC side where Herbert and Mahomes and Allen and Burrow. They're all trading shots all the time. And the AFC Championship this year was Kansas City and Cincy. And maybe next year it's Buffalo and the Chargers. Or maybe it's one of these two teams returning against either Buffalo or the Chargers. I do think that's going to be the case for like the next decade, right? But I will say this. Out of those 4 quarterbacks, I think Joe Burrow is going to end up being the best. I'm including Mahomes. I think what we've seen from Mahomes this year is that when he tries to do too much, it no longer works 100% of the time. The first 3 years of his career, or the first 3 years as a starter, I should say, when he tried to do too much, the no-look passes, and it always worked. It never went haywire. Well, haywire became a part of the equation this year in the first month or so of the season, and when the defense wasn't able to pick them up from the other side of the ball, it blew up in their face a little bit.
But I saw him go right down the field in 13 seconds or whatever it was that I don't know if anybody else could have.
Well, I also saw him not be able to score a touchdown in the last the last 3 quarters essentially against the Bengals. So I think Burrow's going to end up being the best of the bunch, and I think that gets him even, and you made a great point earlier about the mismanagement of the Brown family and the Bengals organization. That could end up pushing Joe Burrow out the door someday,
They had
right?
a great defense, and they had a pretty good coach, and they had the makings of a team that could give the Steelers fits for 7-8 years.
And it fell apart like that.
It just
in an instant.
It just deteriorated.
So,
because they were still practicing outside.
Right. So that still exists, I think, that possibility. But I think even Burrow is enough to overcome their shortcomings in the organization. At least, in my opinion, I think he goes back at least one more time.
We can agree to
this.
This age of quarterbacks, especially in the AFC, is going to be fascinating to watch from now until about 2030.
Yeah.
It is.
It's like I said, I think we're going to get a string of those big-time battles between all 4 of these guys. And then who knows if there's a younger quarterback
Trevor
that
Lawrence
doesn't
might
come
end
up
up being
yeah.
good. Tua might be good.
Add that to the mix as well. It's the Fan